Incredible act of kindness. Black waitress shields disabled daughter, revealing amazing humanity. Maya's heart raced as she maneuvered through the chaos of the diner, coffee pot in hand, a smile plastered across her face that felt more like a mask than a reflection of her true self. The clattering of dishes and the hum of conversation barely registered as she focused on Zoe, her 8-year-old daughter with bright brown eyes and an insatiable curiosity, who sat nearby, independent yet vulnerable. Each shift felt heavier than the last, yet Maya carried the weight of her responsibilities with fierce pride, even as the world often weighed against them. But today was different. Today, the murmurs from a nearby table, filled with snickering patrons in crisp suits, pierced her focus. "Can you believe that child?" one scoffed, nodding toward Zoe. Maya felt heat rise in her chest, her pulse quickening, a mix of shame and possessiveness flooding her senses. The reality of economic inequality and societal prejudice was raw, sharp, and unyielding. Could she bear another day of condescension from people who couldn't fathom her struggles? Before Maya could contemplate the next table's order, one filled with regulars who always tipped poorly, a fleeting sound broke her trance. Zoe, eager to engage with a small group of children at another table, called out. Her laugh, innocent and lovely, echoed through the diner, and for a moment Maya's heart swelled. But it was short-lived. The laughter from the affluent group twisted, turning her joy into agony as they mocked her daughter's desire to connect. Suddenly, every ounce of grace she'd cultivated slipped. The anxious thoughts spiraled, dominated by one resolute question. What would happen if she didn't intervene? To watch her daughter, so exuberant, be ridiculed, it felt unbearable. She wanted to shield Zoe, to cocoon her from this cruelty. Yet fear gripped her, a vice that whispered caution. Maybe it was better to turn away, to pretend none of it was happening, as she often did. But could she allow that? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. With a deep breath, Maya stepped forward, each stride strengthening her resolve. "That's my daughter you're laughing at," she declared, her voice steady yet fierce, each word rising above the din. It was both an act of defiance and desperate protection. The staring eyes of the diner felt like daggers against her resolve. Maya witnessed the laughter fade, replaced by shock and confusion. For a moment, it seemed she'd frozen time. But the heat of the situation began to suffocate her. As she faced the jeering group, their startled expressions igniting a fire within her, Maya's pulse quickened. What if they cursed her? What if they took their disdain out on Zoe? Every scenario played out in her mind, spiraling into a torrent of uncertainty. A million possibilities of failure loomed, each threatening to pull her down. But she had taken the first step into the light. Now she had to see where it led. Reality remained sharp, each passing moment amplifying the stakes. Would this single act of courage spark a change, or would it only result in more hardship for her and Zoe? The diner's atmosphere thickened with tension, and for Maya, the crossroads felt painfully clear. With her daughter's innocence on the line, she braced herself, knowing they might finally be honored or further marginalized. And as her heart thundered in her chest, she realized her fight had only just begun. Maya's mind raced as she stood there, the air heavy with anticipation. The looks exchanged around the diner felt like a collective breath held, every patron momentarily suspended at her audacity. She could feel Zoe's gaze on her, a mixture of confusion and admiration swirling in her eyes. That brief connection empowered Maya. It reminded her of the vulnerability she was protecting, pushing against the paralyzing fear of rejection and scorn. "Do you have a problem with her?" she challenged, the words breaking free from her lips like an engine revving up. The group fell silent, their faces painted with disbelief. In that moment, Maya stood taller, her body tense in defiance. It was an unfamiliar stance, one that seemed to shift her very essence, dismantling years of internalized shame. The lead scoffer, a man with an impeccably tailored suit that hung off his shoulders with far more privilege than sense, smirked, attempting to regain control. "We just don't see what's so special about her," he drawled, dismissiveness dripping from his tone. Maya clenched her fists, recalling every struggle and triumph that had brought her to this moment. "She's generous, insightful, and full of life," she articulated, her voice resonating with conviction she hadn't fully realized she possessed. "She deserves respect, whether you understand her or not." As the murmurs resumed, intertwining indignation behind porcelain mugs and unbudging plates, Maya took a single step forward, fueled by something deeper than mere protection. It was about redefining the narrative, not just for Zoe, but for herself. A rush of empowerment coursed through her, igniting a spark of ambition buried beneath routine and conformity. The conflict wasn't just external. Within her, a tumult of doubt battled ambition. Was she ready to reclaim her narrative? Could she facilitate understanding where only ridicule had festered? Each question whirled in her mind, but a sturdy resolve began to quiet the chaos. Perhaps this event was not just another humiliation, but a pivotal moment that could change their realities. "Let me tell you something about my daughter," Maya pressed on, her gaze unwavering against the backdrop of the diner's chatter. "She's not a statistic. She's a living, breathing person with a heart and a mind. So if you want to mock her, you should know that it's not just an insult to her, it's also an insult to every mother who loves fiercely in this world." There was a collective shift in the atmosphere. The laughter froze, replaced by a stifling tension. For the first time, Maya saw the chinks in their armored facade, the uncertain glances exchanged among the affluent group. A flicker of understanding? She couldn't tell, but it didn't matter. The simple act of standing her ground was a revelation. As the silence stretched uncomfortably, the diner's other patrons manifested their support. Whispers of agreement bubbled up, some applauding quietly, others nodding solemnly. Maya felt the tide change. She had tapped into a current of shared humanity, a small but potent rebellion against cold indifference. For the first time, she realized that her voice could shatter preconceived notions, that courage could inspire silence instead of fear. But as she turned towards Zoe, a shadow of uncertainty passed through her heart. Had she truly made a difference, or simply stirred a nest of hostility? The wider implications loomed large in her mind. This was but a small battle in an unrelenting war of perception. Yet, as she took a deep breath, the weight that had settled on her shoulders for years felt slightly lighter. The diner's patrons stirred, an unpredictable response brewing within them. "Can we leave now, Mom?" Zoe asked, her innocence breaking the tension like a whisper. "In a minute, honey," Maya replied, her eyes scanning the room for a sign of what she should do next. She had fought for her daughter, but what did it mean for them moving forward? A realization gripped her. Standing up was only the beginning. The real journey lay ahead in confronting the underlying bias that had plagued their lives. The moment of action had ignited a fire, but it would require a plan to truly wield it. Facing another day of uncertainty, Maya felt the familiar mix of fear and exhilaration take hold. It was clear the fight was not just for Zoe's dignity, but her own, and she was willing to face it, whatever that might entail. But as she looked over the crowd, confronted by the palpable tension, she couldn't help but wonder, what other challenges awaited her beyond those diner walls?
Maya stepped away from the fading echoes of that charged moment, her heart still hammering in her chest as she led Zoe toward the diner's exit. The door swung open with a soft jingle, releasing them back into the world outside, a stark contrast to the bottled tension they had just fought against. The cool air washed over her, invigorating, yet laced with the unshakable aftertaste of confrontation. As they walked, a
mixture of disbelief and satisfaction swirled within Maya. She replayed the scene over and over in her mind, dissecting her words and the reactions they elicited. Did she truly make an impact? Or had she merely stirred the pot without providing any genuine remedy? Facing Zoe's innocent gaze, Maya felt a flicker of doubt. She wanted to shield her daughter from the harshness of the world, but also felt a deep urge to equip Zoe with the tools to navigate it. "Mom," Zoe piped up, drawing Maya back from her spiraling thoughts. "That was really brave." Maya's heart warmed at the praise, but simultaneously tightened with uncertainty. "Brave or foolish?" she murmured, more to herself than to her daughter. The honesty in Zoe's eyes reminded Maya that self-empowerment was a two-way street. Zoe was watching her closely, absorbing lessons delivered not through words alone, but through action. "Neither," Zoe insisted. "I wish I could do that." The earnestness in her daughter's voice struck a chord. Maya realized that the steps she took from that point forward would shape Zoe's understanding of courage, dignity, and self-worth. The responsibility weighed heavily on her, like a mantle of leadership she had unknowingly agreed to bear. This moment, she thought, was a fulcrum in their lives, tipping them toward empowerment. Still lost in reflection, Maya clenched her fists around the straps of her bag, the texture of the fabric grounding her as she steeled herself for the road ahead. How could she transform her newfound resolve into a tangible plan? The thought spurred her mind into overdrive. What if she gathered stories? From parents, from children, from adults who had faced ridicule for reasons beyond their control. Perhaps a blog or a video series could serve as a beacon for others like her, a virtual space where narratives of strength could outweigh those of negative judgment. She pictured herself sitting at her kitchen table, the soft glow of evening light filling the room, as she crafted posts that resonated with authenticity and strength. With her heart racing anew, Maya turned to Zoe, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. "How do you feel about helping me share our story? I think it could help a lot of people." Zoe's eyes lit up, and for a moment Maya felt her own resolve solidify. They could start something meaningful together, an act of defiance against ignorance and stigma, a way to empower others. Just then, the question of practical matters intruded. Maya's chest tightened as she faced the reality of her current situation. How would she find the time in their already busy lives? Could she really find resources, support, maybe even a community to sustain this effort? Fear gnawed at her edges, but a burning ambition began to eclipse it. As they continued walking, a plan started to crystallize. Each step felt lighter as Maya embraced the notion of turning the tide in their favor. But in the back
of her mind lurked another question. How would she handle backlash from those who thrived on ridicule and contempt? The wind rustled through the trees lining the sidewalk, almost as though it was whispering a challenge to her. The deeper implications of her newfound determination loomed ahead, each tangent branching off into paths filled with both opportunity and risk. Maya took a deep breath, allowing herself a moment to savor this new chapter of agency. She was no longer merely a bystander in her own story, but an active participant wielding the pen. Yet as she prepared to take the plunge, she couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest battles awaited her. What would she do when the inevitable pushback came? How would she respond when faced with the same ridicule she stood against today? The answers sat like a coiled spring, waiting for the right moment to unfurl. She just had to be ready for it. Maya sat at her small kitchen table. The weight of the world felt particularly heavy today. The clutter of dinner dishes lingered, untouched. She could see Zoe's backpack slumped against the wall like an idle reminder of her duties as a mother, a reality that pressed down on her with each passing moment. The excitement of their conversation from earlier now felt distant, overshadowed by a growing sense of overwhelm regarding her commitment to start sharing their story. Her laptop sat open, displaying a blank document. It mocked her silence, and with each typewriter-like click, she sensed the insistent urging of potential. But the words didn't flow. The ideas, while vivid in her mind, transformed into an indistinct fog, eluding her grasp. What was the first step? She thought of the stories she wanted to gather, the impact they could make. But how could she approach others and ask them to share such intimate experiences when her own stability felt so fragile? In that moment, self-doubt crept in. The resentment she often felt for the people spouting negativity loomed larger, feeding into her hesitation. How could she articulate what she wanted to achieve without sounding idealistic or naive? She took a deep breath, focusing on her motivation, Zoe. The ideal of creating a safe place, a platform for voices to be heard, reignited a flicker of determination within. "Focus," she muttered under her breath, gripping the edge of her chair as if to anchor herself. She needed a foundation. She considered the people she knew, fellow parents from school, friends she'd met during Zoe's therapy sessions, even strangers who had shared similar challenges in passing conversations. What if she reached out to them first, invited them to share their narratives? The thought was daunting, but also hinted at connection. She smiled at the prospect. It felt like a lifeline, pulling her out of her spiral. But there was something more unsettling lurking in the back of her mind, the fear of judgment from her community, from those who would scoff at her attempts to provoke change. Drawing her fingers tentatively across the keyboard, she opened a new email. "Dear friend," she typed, initiating a connection she had been avoiding out of fear. As she formed the words, she recognized that she was no longer merely speaking for herself. She was also representing Zoe, both of their hopes embodied in this simple outreach. "Hey, I'm starting a project about experiences with bullying, and I thought you might want to share your story." As the sentences flowed, she felt a cathartic rush. A reckoning with her vulnerability became transformative. The keyboard clicked in a steady rhythm, loud and confident. In the days that followed, conversations blossomed. Maya found herself not only gathering stories, but forging a community in the most unexpected ways. People responded, some tentative but eager to share. Surprisingly, she felt less perceived as an outsider and more like a facilitator of shared experiences. Each reply compelled urgency within her. She cataloged the stories, unearthing empathy in her own heart. But with the burgeoning excitement came the gnawing undercurrent of fear, the backlash. How would these individuals react to the conversations she was starting? Would others come for her, ridicule her efforts as some had before? Maya hugged her laptop tightly as she thought of the first nasty comment. Would it break her spirit, or would it reinforce her resolve? As she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, a new thought emerged. Could she confront this negativity head-on? What if she documented those encounters, tracked how they made her feel? Instead of shrinking back, perhaps she could transform her vulnerabilities into narratives of strength. Maya knew the real challenge would be facing the critics of her endeavor, those who thrived in the shadows of condescension and derision. The deeper she pushed into this project, the more she sensed an impending confrontation brewing. Pushing through her rising anxiety, she resolved to lay the groundwork for her next steps. If she were to succeed, she would need to brace herself not only for support, but for resistance. Would she be able to stand firm upon the stage of scrutiny? Would she emerge from this unscathed, or would the haters seize upon her openness? With a determined sigh, she resolved, she must be ready. Each word shared, every story told, and every pushback faced would be another layer added to her journey of growth. It was clear now, she was setting the parameters of her battlefield, and she could not afford to back down. The next morning, the air felt electric, charged by possibility.
Maya's fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to engage with her audience. But inside her head echoed a potent question. What if the very act of sharing drew in more resentment than she ever anticipated? Only time would reveal what came next. Maya was unprepared for the wave of responses that flooded in after she sent her initial outreach. Each email and message ignited something within her, more
than just curiosity. It was a feeling of responsibility. Each person's narrative brought another angle to the multifaceted issue of bullying, yet inside her chest, the weight of her own insecurities resettled, heavier. Was she truly ready to be the voice for these unvarnished experiences? The sun streamed through her kitchen window, illuminating the scattered notebooks and crumpled papers bearing her notes. She had begun to distill the stories into themes. Resilience, vulnerability, and, surprisingly, hope were threads that wove together each account. The themes were clear, yet it was her own narrative, the fear and uncertainty, that threatened to unravel her intentions. A few evenings later, as she reviewed the stories one more time, the fatigue of their content began to weigh on her. She found it hard to shake the gripping thought, how? Would she reconcile these voices with her own? Her ambition was high, but her confidence teetered on the precipice of self-doubt. Determined to push through, Maya decided to meet the fears head-on. From what she gathered, the resistance she anticipated would not only come from outside critics, but also from her deeper self, a version of her that relished in the comfort of anonymity and avoidance. Deciding to confront that self, she allocated time to articulate her anxieties. I am afraid of being judged. I am afraid of failing. The concise declarations stood stark against the blank pages meant for her project. Then an unexpected email landed in her inbox, a message from an old acquaintance, someone who had always approached her with skepticism during their previous encounters. I heard you're collecting stories about bullying, it read. I don't think it's a good idea, it read. The underlying tone was clear. She was weighing Maya down with another layer of self-doubt. Maya sat back, feeling an avalanche of emotion flood her, anger, fear, and frustration swirling together. Did this person understand the depth of distress these stories represented? Beyond her own vulnerability, the essence of these narratives demanded acknowledgement and respect. She closed her laptop and stepped outside, letting the cool air wrap around her. Nature was her escape. With every breath, she attempted to articulate the weight of the critic's words into something manageable. Instead, they transformed into fuel. What if she adopted the confrontational spirit she had only recently considered? The very act of sharing was, in itself, a form of bravery she admired in others. Returning to her kitchen, Maya opened a new document, this time resolute. She began sketching a new chapter for the project. The format outlined not only the stories, but her dedication to transparency about the process, including negative feedback. She envisioned featuring a dialogue with her critics, openly addressing the fears they carried alongside her own. Doing this could mean refusing to cower. Perhaps she wouldn't only gather stories, but capture the entire journey of confrontation and acceptance. As the days progressed, the idea crystallized further. The project would morph from simple storytelling into a shared exploration of resilience. Yes, there would be negativity, skepticism, and ultimately confrontation. But it was about growth rather than mere positivity. For the first time, she felt eager about the confrontation instead of terrified of it. That night, she sent a follow-up message to her contact, outlining her intent. This was not merely a collection of stories, but a collective effort to face adversity and empathy. As the words took shape, the altitude of Maya's ambition soared. But deep inside, a thought nagged at her. Would this confrontation magnify her vulnerabilities even further? Was she reaching too far beyond her safe space? With dawn approaching, Maya understood she was navigating her own psychological battlefield, and the stakes were gradually rising. What awaited her once she stepped onto that battlefield? The blossoming awareness of her capabilities, or the crippling fear of failure? The time had come to not just face herself, but to embrace her journey.
Would she dare to pull back the curtain and invite everyone into the turmoil of candid storytelling, or would she retreat once again into the shadows of her self-doubt? Maya's resolve thickened as the days turned into a blur of writing, revising, and contemplating how to put herself back in the fray. She found herself oscillating between moments of fierce determination and languid self-doubt. Each night, she sat at her kitchen table, her laptop glowing against the dark, and typed until her fingers ached, capturing narratives that were at once painful and cathartic. Yet there was an undercurrent of hesitation that she couldn't ignore. Conversations with supportive friends had become a lifeline, but they also subtly reminded her of the reality she was stepping into. "You have to prepare for backlash, Maya," they would say, concern etched on their faces. Each voice added a layer of expectation, a weight that threatened to draw her back into the shadows. One afternoon, during her usual visit to the park, her sanctuary for grounding herself, she overheard two mothers discussing the importance of teaching their children about empathy. Their conversation circled back to the topic of bullying, about how those who stood by often became complicit in the acts of cruelty. The words gnawed at her. What was she doing then? Was she standing by, watching, rather than engaging? That was the pivotal moment. Maya realized that her project wasn't merely about confronting her fears. It was about challenging the silence that often surrounded discussions of bullying. The trepidation she felt could be transformed into a bold commitment to foster understanding, to spark dialogue. But with each revelation, the urge to retreat loomed over her, its magnetic pull insistent. Back home, the once familiar chaos of paper and notebook seemed now to take on a life of its own. She carefully arranged the scattered notes, consciously working against the paralysis of indecision. It became clear she needed not just to compile the stories, but to intertwine them with her own journey of acceptance. She began to write an introduction, a raw and vulnerable account of her own experiences with bullying, anxiety, and the humbling realization of her own imperfections. But there was still a voice that murmured doubt. What if her narrative overshadowed those she sought to highlight? What if aspiring to this honesty stripped others of their voices? The anxiety felt almost tangible as she wrote, her heart hammering with each word. It was a fine line to walk. Her story was essential, but she didn't want it to eclipse the stories she had gathered. Just as she felt that shift toward clarity, another jarring email landed in her inbox. This one was different. It came from a courageous young woman whose own bullying experiences mirrored Maya's, but blended with troubling complexities. "I hope you understand," the email started. "My story is painful, and I'm not sure I want to share it." Maya felt the weight of the young woman's hesitancy reverberate through the screen. An uncanny empathy enveloped her. She knew that feeling of hesitation, of wanting to step into the light but fearing the burn. Maya rushed to type a response, maintaining the delicate balance of encouraging openness while respecting boundaries. Just as she pressed send, her heart raced. Was she capable of making a difference? Her thoughts battled between wanting to be a guiding light and the fear of being unworthy. Drawing herself back to the writing, she found her pulse quickening with excitement during her reflections. What if, alongside the narratives of others, she implemented an interactive section in her project? A space for readers to engage with their own thoughts, explore their preconceptions, share their apprehensions, all while drawing from shared stories. As she sat back and contemplated this, Maya realized that this endeavor was about more than just exposure for the sake of it. It was shaping into an invitation for personal reflection and growth, not just for her, but for others. She could transform the narrative into active dialogues and open dialogue spaces for everyone involved. The path ahead remained uncertain, yet the thrill of uncovering something profound ignited her passion. How could she structure this to effectively engage an audience while also supporting those ready to share their stories? As she mulled over this, her phone buzzed. A notification from an old college friend inviting her to a gathering. She hesitated.
The thought of mingling, being observed, and the potential judgment clamped around her throat. But in that instant, Maya realized this event could serve dual purposes: networking with potential storytellers and confronting her own fears about social exposure. The questions loomed large. Would this gathering reshape her abilities to connect with others and gather more stories? Or would it further entrench her in her own insecurities? As she gathered her things to head out, a mix of anticipation and foreboding coursed through her veins. This night could change everything, or it could spiral her further into doubt. With determination, she stepped outside, uncertain of the transformation awaiting her. Could she truly break down the walls she had carefully constructed? Each step felt like an entrance
into the unknown, and she braced herself for the confrontation, both with others and within. Little did she know, someone at that gathering would alter the course of her project forever. As Maya approached the gathering, a familiar sense of unease washed over her, an echo of uncertainty that had become almost comforting in its own way. The outside world buzzed with energy, and she felt like an intruder in someone else's celebration. She tugged her jacket closer around her, the fabric a thin barrier against the chill of vulnerability creeping through her core. Stepping over the threshold, she was immediately met with the flood of voices blending into a warm hum. Laughter bounced around the room, punctuated by clinking glasses and the soft shuffle of feet across polished floors. For a moment, she lingered at the entrance, assessing the sea of mingling bodies. Each smile seemed sharp, revealing a world she was hesitant to engage with. But retreat was not an option anymore. She took a breath, forcing the air into her lungs as if it could ignite some hidden courage. With each stride deeper into the room, she reminded herself of her mission: to connect, to share, to listen. The voices that had once pulled her back were now a catalyst for her forward motion. Mina navigated through clusters of friends and acquaintances, her heart racing. The room felt both overwhelming and exhilarating, saturated with stories yet to be uncovered. She shared brief hellos, but what she sought eluded her. This wasn't merely a social gathering, it was a potential wellspring of narratives that could enrich her project. As she neared the bar, she spotted Jessica, a classmate from her college years. Jessica was striking, her confidence palpable, as she effortlessly balanced a drink in one hand and gestured animatedly with the other. Maya felt a flicker of recognition, yet the boundaries of their previous friendship felt too distant in that moment. "Hey, Maya," Jessica exclaimed, her eyes brightening as she approached. "I didn't expect to see you here. How have you been?" Maya hesitated, the words flooding her mind but getting tangled, unsure whether to share her progress or skirt around the heavy emotions that had enveloped her in recent months. "I'm working on a project related to bullying," she finally managed. Jessica's brow furrowed with interest. "That's significant. What angle are you taking?" Maya considered how to phrase it, without exposing the raw underbelly of her own conflicts. "I think it's about transforming fear into understanding, creating a space for people to share their stories. It could be interactive." Jessica nodded earnestly, encouraging her to continue. "That's really powerful. You could do so much good with that." But she paused, her expression shifting. "It sounds a bit personal. How do you feel about sharing your own experiences? Isn't it daunting?" Maya's chest tightened. "Yes, it is. I'm scared of overshadowing others, of being too exposed. What if no one wants to hear my voice?" The admission slipped from her lips.
Unguarded, like a release of pent-up anxiety. Jessica's gaze softened, and she stepped closer. "Everyone has something valuable to share, especially those who felt silenced. You're not alone in feeling this way. If you want, I could introduce you to some friends who've been through similar experiences." Maya's heart leaped as hope flickered to life. "Really? That would be amazing," she breathed, the slightest smile breaking through her uncertainty. Jessica began weaving through the crowd, leading Maya in tow, and on the way, they passed a small group exchanging stories in earnest whispers. Their body language was open, and Maya couldn't help but feel drawn to their vulnerability.
One of the women, visibly animated, recounted her journey with bullying and resilience, her voice laced with emotion. Maya felt an unspoken connection, a thread that tied her own fears to those of others. As Jessica introduced her to more people, the evening unfurled into a tapestry of experiences that rejuvenated her spirit. With every shared story, Maya felt segments of her own trepidation retreat, replaced by a growing conviction that she had a purpose to fulfill through the project. However, just as she was finding her rhythm, an unexpected ripple sliced through the atmosphere. A figure from her past crossed her line of sight, an old bully, someone who had haunted her memories, standing across the room, unaware of her presence. Maya's breath caught in her throat. The moment of truth had arrived, not just for her, but also for her project. How would she confront this fragment of her past while bearing the weight of newfound understanding? Would she confront him, or use this moment as further motivation for her transformative journey? The tension in her heart escalated, pulling her attention inward and driving her thoughts to the forefront. This encounter could mark a significant juncture in her growth, an opportunity to reclaim her narrative. With determination softly intertwining with fear, she gripped her drink tighter and considered her next move. Would stepping forward reclaim her past and bolster her project, or would it throw her back into the depths of her insecurities? Each heartbeat echoed with questions that hung in the air, a prelude to a revelation that could redefine her journey. Maya's gaze remained fixed on the figure across the room, her mind racing. The bully was laughing, unaware of the tempest brewing inside her. The stark contrast of their worlds, the celebration around her, and the wariness of her past, felt suffocating. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that this moment was bigger than just a confrontation. It was about growth, agency, and the resilience she aimed to embody through her project. She glanced at Jessica, who was engrossed in conversation with another acquaintance, and seized the opportunity to step away. Each footfall felt heavy yet exhilarating, a paradox of dread mingling with determination. If she had come here to connect and share, to heal and grow, then she had to face the shadows lurking from her past. Maya's heart thudded as she drew closer, feeling every ounce of her fear rising to pressure her resolve. How many times had she rehearsed what she would say if she ever encountered him again? Today, she needed clarity more than rehearsed lines. This wasn't a scene from a play. This was her life, her empowerment, her narrative to reclaim. The chatter around her dimmed in comparison to the pulse of her own heartbeat. As she approached, the laughter of her past bully became clearer, a reminder of the echoes that had haunted her for years. Should she confront him? Apologize for any lingering bitterness? Or would that simply reopen an old wound? Her thoughts circled relentlessly, and before she could talk herself out of it, she stood mere feet away. "What do you want?" he asked, his laughter fading into a guarded tone. Uncertainty twisted inside her, a reaction she had never hoped to feel again. Yet there was something unyielding in her stance. "I'm here to focus on the future," Maya replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "To create a dialogue about bullying and promote understanding. It's what I need to do." His brow arched, surprise mingling with mockery. "You? So you're some kind of advocate now?" The derision in his tone pricked at her skin. "Yes," she said, "it's about time I took action. And you, what are you doing here? Still thriving on the misery of others?" Each word was charged, a test of her newfound confidence, her vulnerability tightening into strength. He scoffed. "Touchy subject for you, huh? Kind of dramatic." Maya's heart fired, the moment sparking a blend of residual anger and newfound empowerment. It was never about drama. It was about killing dreams, breaking spirits. Mine almost became one of them. She took a step forward, not back. "But I'm claiming my narrative now."
In that charged exchange, she realized this wasn't really about the past. This was about acknowledgement, the past's hold over her weakening. His eyes flickered through surprise, amusement, and then something almost disarmed. He shifted his gaze, seemingly embarrassed, and for a split second, Maya felt a deep-rooted empathy well up inside. What had once filled her with fear now birthed pity and, curiously, a calm buoyancy. "You don't have to continue being that person," she said. "The hurt can stop with you." Maya stepped back, feeling lighter despite the tension still thick in the air. She had spoken her truth, and while she didn't expect a transformation, she felt accomplished. As she rejoined Jessica, a warmth surged through her chest, like a phoenix rising from the ashes of her past. "I did it," she whispered, barely believing her own words. "I confronted him." Jessica's expression brightened. "See? That's what I'm talking about. You're growing into the advocate you want to be. What's next for you?" Maya's mind danced with possibilities. With the momentum of this encounter behind her, perhaps it was time to delve deeper, to share her own stories alongside those she would.
The night still held promise for new connections, new narratives of resilience. But just as she turned to gather her thoughts, an older woman approached with a knowing look. "I overheard your exchange," she said gently. "You have a story of your own. Have you considered sharing it in your project?" Maya's stomach knotted, the weight of that suggestion wrapping around her. Could she truly open up about her vulnerabilities? The question lingered in her mind, a new challenge beckoning her forward. The realization struck hard. She was standing on the brink of something transformative. This project could indeed become a sanctuary, not just for others, but for her own healing as well. With newfound resolve racing against the doubts that tried to creep back in, she reminded herself, "This isn't just for them, it's for me." As the night stretched on, the weight of her decision remained poised in the air, a palpable force shifting her trajectory. What would it take to weave her own experiences into the overarching narrative she aimed to create? Stepping into the unknown had never been her strong suit, but now the path lay open before her. Now it seemed both daunting and inviting. As she considered her next step, the uncertainty loomed larger than ever, promising not only personal growth but potential setbacks. Would she have the courage to become a voice worth hearing, even if it meant encountering her deepest vulnerabilities? The tension pulsed with possibility, drawing her ever closer to the next chapter of her life's unfolding narrative. Maya stood in the shadow of a decision that felt both liberating and terrifying. The notion of sharing her own story invaded her thoughts, blooming like a wildflower amid the brambles of doubt. Could she truly expose those harrowing moments of her past, allowing the jagged edges of her experiences to reflect in her project? The older woman's words echoed, a subtle invitation to transform her pain into purpose. She leaned against the wall, surveying the room, which had not changed yet felt utterly different. The laughter and chatter swirled around her, an almost tangible current of life, yet she was drowning in her own reflections. Each face seemed to carry a piece of a larger narrative, each person a potential thread weaving into the fabric of understanding. How could she contribute to this tapestry without revealing the rawest parts of herself? Thoughts spiraled in her mind. What if they didn't relate? What if her story became a reason for mockery instead of connection? But as she recalled her confrontation with the bully, the plants of determination sprouted anew. She had owned her narrative, but that was only the surface. What lay beneath? Maya shifted her focus, drifting into a quieter corner where muted tones offered solace. Her pulse quickened as she recalled every sting of harsh words flung her way, every moment of belittlement that had dimmed her light. How those memories had accompanied her into adulthood like unwanted shadows. But could she define them now as tools for growth rather than measures of suffering? A whisper of courage ignited within her.
If she could find strength in confronting her past, couldn't she also find power in sharing it? Her breath steadied, each exhale shedding a layer of apprehension. This was more than a story. It was her story, raw, flawed, and undeniably hers. Glancing around, she noticed a small group engaged in conversation nearby, discussing their own journeys with bullying and advocacy. Would they welcome her experience, or would she be met with indifference? Frustration simmered within her at the thought of retreating back into her shell, silencing the very voice she yearned to express. As Maya contemplated the trajectory of her project, the dichotomy of vulnerability and empowerment revealed itself. She had previously viewed vulnerability as a weakness, a chink in the armor she had built around herself. Now it felt like an entry point, a chance to connect through the very fabric that once isolated her. Then an unexpected thought struck her. What if her experiences could also serve as cautionary tales? What if those hidden wounds held lessons that could foster resilience in others? A compelling narrative sparked in her mind. It wasn't just about the pain. It was about the healing, the stepping stones leading to a brave rebirth beyond the hurt. Reinvigorated by her awareness, Maya felt an electric surge of possibility coursing through her veins. She reached for her phone, her fingers hovering over the screen as she considered her next move. Perhaps a video message could capture her essence, one that could echo the very triumphs and trials she wished to illuminate. Her heart raced with the thought. It would be her voice, resonating across the digital landscape, inviting others to join her in recognizing their strengths. But a lingering question hung in the air. What if the anecdotes she dared to share played right into the hands of those who sought to mock? What if they turned her truth into fodder for ridicule? The conflict sharpened. Each decision seemed imbued with the potential for both liberation and ridicule. Maya sighed, feeling the weight of her dual narrative, the insider's fear and the burgeoning advocate's ambition. Her identity was a canvas waiting to be painted. But would she have the courage to wield the brush, to articulate her emotional landscape, to embrace vulnerability as a strength rather than a liability? The path in front of her twisted and turned with uncertainty, every step promising growth, every thought mounting a challenge. She felt propelled into an exploration where each encounter could act as a mirror, revealing her understanding not just of herself, but of others. As she processed these complex emotions, a new voice broke through her reverie. Jessica approached, a twinkle of curiosity in her eyes. "What's brewing in that head of yours, Maya? You look ready to unleash something monumental." Maya paused, her thoughts swirling into coherent purpose. Perhaps it was time not just to share her story, but to create a space where dialogue could flourish, where others could also unearth their narratives. Maybe it was time to face the ultimate test of willingness, to craft a message rivaling her pain and emerging triumphant from the shadows. "I'm ready to speak, Jess," she declared, words quivering with determination. "But I need to know how to do it right. I want to facilitate something meaningful. It can't just be about me." Jessica's face brightened with encouragement, sensing the gravity of the moment. "Let's brainstorm. Together, we can turn this into something impactful." As they began to sketch out ideas, Maya felt invigorated, but aware of the weight that spanned the depths of this undertaking. This journey was more than a simple project. It was a portal for both healing and advocacy. And through it, she would face an upcoming question that loomed. Would she have the courage to maneuver the delicate balance between personal narrative and outreach, all while fostering sincerity in a world often quick to judge? The moment felt heavy with potential, and as the first notes of planning turned to details, she realized this was only the beginning. The questions lay ahead, reframing her pursuit with intensity rather than fear. What awaited her in the face of vulnerability and honesty? The answers danced on the precipice, and the dusky night seemed full of promise. Each heartbeat resonated with the truth she was ready to confront. Her effort to make a real impact was just taking flight. Would it soar or crumble in the winds of doubt? Only time would unveil the next chapter of her evolving journey. Maya sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open to a nearly completed rough draft, her first attempt at articulating her story of resilience, vulnerability, and growth. After weeks of grappling with fear, uncertainty, and a mix of exhilaration, she finally had something substantial to share. The words she had crafted poured out of her, fueled by a clarity that arose from her confrontation with her bully and the encouragement she received from Jessica. In that moment, she realized the significance of her evolution. She had embarked on a journey not only to advocate for others, but also to reclaim her narrative, a process fundamental to her personal journey. Gone was the passive observer, allowing shame and fear to dictate her path. Instead, she had transformed into an active participant, leveraging her experiences to foster understanding and connection. Reading her words, Maya felt a rush of empowerment envelop her. She was no longer fragmented by her past. Each sentence echoed her strength, illustrating the tangible growth she had achieved. She recalled the days spent tiptoeing through her emotions, silencing herself to appease the fears of judgment. The transformation felt monumental, a symbolic departure from the shadows of self-doubt into the light of confidence. Maya leaned back in her chair, assessing her progress. Just months earlier, speaking openly about her experiences seemed like an insurmountable obstacle. Now, though, she recognized the courage it took to
harness her pain into a force for advocacy. Picturing her project, a space for dialogue about bullying and the scars it left, instilled a sense of rightful purpose within her. Emboldened by her self-reflection and propelled by the stories she collected, she made a decision that marked her advancement. She would host a live session to discuss her journey, inviting those willing to share their narratives without judgment. This was more than an outlet for expression. It was a community of support that would serve as a vital resource for others who felt isolated or hurt. Each time she envisioned that conversation, a shared exchange of experiences, it lit a fire within her. Shared narratives could dismantle walls and nurture empathy. Maya began sketching ideas for the session, considering how to foster a safe environment where vulnerability would be met with understanding instead of derision. As she crafted the outline, one thought lingered prominently. This is the moment. It was time to demonstrate her growth and use her platform to inspire others to embrace their stories, showcasing a collective power that had once felt out of reach. In the days that followed, she organized the session, sharing it with her network, urging friends and acquaintances to join her. Each notification of confirmation reflected validation. Others were willing to take this leap with her, to lay bare their struggles and triumphs. The day of the live session arrived unexpectedly quickly. Maya's heart raced. Standing in front of her laptop, she looked into the camera, feeling both anxious and electrified. A wave of familiar self-doubt threatened to crash over her, but she steadied her voice. This was more than just her story. It was about creating a ripple effect. As she shared her narrative with those tuned in, she felt the weight of judgment lift. Each word was a springboard for connection, the chat frame filled with supportive affirmations and shared experiences from participants. In that moment, she saw the power of community blossom, the compassion and understanding mirrored in their interactions. After the session, the positive feedback flooded in. People reached out with gratitude, expressing how Maya's transparency and courage inspired them to begin sharing their own stories. The validation was profound, serving as a foundation upon which both she and others could build resilience. Maya leaned back, breathing in the immense satisfaction of not only acknowledging her growth, but also promoting a space where healing could flourish. The realization that she could contribute to others' journeys brought a deep sense of fulfillment. The fear that had once confined her melted away, replaced by solid confidence and purpose. Through this process, Maya had come to understand that true transformation stemmed from recognizing her vulnerabilities as strengths rather than weaknesses. She conquered her doubts, proving that she could advocate for herself and others. Today, she wasn't just a mother striving to protect her daughter. She was an established voice for those who had felt voiceless. As Maya closed her laptop, a smile crept across her face. She had achieved
what she set out to do, embracing her identity as a storyteller and advocate. She felt confident navigating the complexities of her project, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The experience redefined her aspiration, ensuring that she would continue to grow, challenge societal limitations, and inspire others to do the same. Now was the moment to take action. You need to subscribe now to immerse yourself in more transformative journeys. This is the moment to show your support by leaving a like. It truly makes a difference. Comment your thoughts on Maya's incredible transformation and share your own stories. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel empowered to embrace their voices just like Maya did.